Hello, it's Kathleen and Peter with another weekly wrap up for Health Declassified, and we got a few different things for you today. But first of all, did you know that your emotions and thoughts, good and bad, can be transferred through to someone else? How? By organ donation. Kathleen's going to tell us more about it.
Absolutely, Peter. This is fascinating stuff. Absolutely riveting. So they say here, when organs are transplanted, memories, personalities, preferences, and skills, including what happened at the donor's moment of death, have been repeatedly observed to transfer from the donor to the recipient in a manner that strongly suggests a real transference is occurring, raising significant questions as to where consciousness or memories come from and who we actually are. Isn't that fascinating? Dr. Paul Purcell's groundbreaking research documented 73 heart transplant cases where recipients experienced dramatic personality changes, food preferences, sexual orientation shifts,
What?
yep, and even acquired new skills that perfectly match their unknown donors. So they say here approximately 10% of heart transplant recipients report experiencing emotions they believe came from their donor, with the most sensitive individuals sharing specific personality traits like being highly creative, body aware, and physically sensitive. That's incredible.
Oh,
Yeah, I
just
can't believe that.
wow.
And they cite an example here, Peter. You won't believe this. This will blow your mind. Listen to this. The most extraordinary cases include an 8-year-old girl who received a murdered child's heart and provided police with accurate details that led to the killer's conviction, and recipients who suddenly developed artistic abilities matching their donor's talent. That's just
Wow.
mind-blowing, Peter. Absolutely mind-blowing.
Amazing.
Approaches exist to address trapped emotions in transplanted organs through mind-body therapies, which can help improve the recipient's quality of life and potentially reduce organ rejection by helping the body accept rather than fight the foreign organ. So I know that you have read of some other interesting examples other than this 8-year-old child. Do you want to share some of those, Peter?
Yeah, the two that I read about that fascinate me the most was one was a case of Claire Sylvia. She was a woman of 47 and she had a heart lung transplant. And soon after, she had a dream that she was being kissed by a man, and his name was Tim, and his surname started with L, last name started with L. And this intrigued her so much for a long period of time. She also, in this dream, and she developed an affinity for beer and chicken nuggets, to a drink and a food that she had never consumed in her previous life. And she also felt much more confident, outgoing, and keen to do exercise than she ever had in her 47 years. She felt all that after her transplant. So she started doing some research and she eventually made contact with the family of the man whose heart and lungs she got. His name was Tim and his last name started with L. He liked beer and chicken nuggets and he was an enthusiastic, very keen on exercise, outgoing, confident guy. So she got all that, right? And she developed all those characteristics before she made contact with the donor's family. That was a fascinating one. Another incredible one was a woman who'd been a lesbian for all her life, and after a heart transplant, she became heterosexual, and she developed a strong preference for a certain type of man. Changed completely. Her sexuality changed 180 degrees. So
Oh
isn't
my
that
God.
amazing?
Absolutely amazing. And you know what, Peter? I've read stories about how DNA, how certain fears that we have to this day,
Hmm.
we may not understand where some of these fears come from. Like people might have fear of spiders or fear of heights or fear of the dark or what have you, fire. And they have no idea. Well, now they're suggesting I've read somewhere, and I can't remember where it was that I read this, that some of those experiences are in fact passed down from your ancestors through your
Hmm.
DNA. So I don't
Wow.
know. I know. I mean, this is such a absolutely fascinating topic, isn't it? Like,
It is indeed. And because it's so fascinating, I reached out to Jill Sitnick, who was on the show either last year or the year before, a little while back. And she is a psychedelic psychotherapist, and she helps particularly veterans with PTSD overcome their problems and their hang-ups with psychedelic psychotherapy. I asked her for comments on this, and she said, well, when you think about it, animals transfer instinct from one generation to the next, transfer we call it instinct, but it's transfer of skills, fears, characteristics that is not learned, it's inherited from their previous generations. So she said, if animals transfer instinct, it's quite possible that humans can transfer consciousness, right? So I thought that was an interesting parallel.
wow, fascinating. It
Yeah.
just mind blowing. It really is.
Yeah, then of course, Kathleen, we were going to talk about a special date next week, right? And we won't have another show before that date. So you start the ball rolling on that.
Well, Peter, of course, here in Canada and the United States, we are, this is about Remembrance Day, which falls on November 11th, and I'm wearing my poppy scarf today in honor of our soldiers and our fallen soldiers, and even the ones that, fight for freedom for our country. And I think it's important to make mention of them. And when we were talking about this just last week, Peter, it made me
Mhm.
wonder, what happens to a soldier out on the battlefield? We talk, you and I, about health every single day. And it just made me wonder, given that it's coming to November 11th, what happens to those soldiers and who treats them? And so I did a little bit of research, basically, and found out that wounded soldiers receive treatment on the battlefield through a system that moves them from immediate care to higher levels of medical support. So, and this process begins with initial care under fire, what they call care under fire, from a combat medic or even a buddy, followed by tactical field care, where medics assess and stabilize the patient at a first aid station. Finally, evacuating the soldier to different facilities such as a field hospital or a larger medical center, which allows for further treatment, including surgery, through a structured system of care levels. So basically, your buddy could be the one saving your life. Well, obviously, on the battlefield, that's very much the case. But if in case of a wounded soldier, it begins with your buddy helping you out, trying to, provide care. And I just, gosh, it chokes me up because I can't even imagine it, Peter. I really can't. And, I think of my poor stepdad that passed away in 2020, and he was uh, a veteran who fought on the front lines in the Korean War. And then it made me think, and we were talking about this earlier about, the various wars, and my partner, whose great grandfather fought in World War One, and I have a picture of him here. I don't know if you can see that.
Oh, yeah, there we go. Yeah,
See that
yeah,
helmet? Do you see that helmet he's
yeah,
wearing in this
yeah.
photo? Well, guess what?
You got it.
This is the helmet he
Wow,
was wearing. This is the exact helmet he was wearing.
that's the helmet he's wearing in that
World
picture,
War
right?
One. Yeah,
So
very
that's
cool.
120 years old now, almost.
Almost.
Wow,
That's right.
quite
That's
incredible.
something. But my friend, you have a story that's,
I do,
I mean,
but I
that's
was
firsthand. That's firsthand, right?
firsthand. Go
Hmm.
back a step to my father, who fought in World War II, although he was born at the beginning of World War One. And there's a picture on coming up here for you to look at with him in his dress uniform. He was in the regiment of the Royal Fusiliers, and he was sent to India in 1939, and he served there for, well, I think earlier than that, but he served there for a couple of years. And at the start of the war, he was sent off to North Africa, and he fought the whole war in the British Army, North Africa, the Italian campaign. So he got through it unscathed, unwounded. And I actually have one of his passbooks from the Royal Fusiliers for 1939. So that was his story. And my mother served in World War II as a WAF, Women's Air Force. She was a military policewoman in London. and all 5'2" of her, or 5'3" maybe, used to go into pubs in London and drag out drunk Air Force servicemen, both English and American, and send them back to the barracks. And
Oh, are
some of
you
these guys were
kidding me?
probably 6'4", and she would go in with her baton, and she took no crap from any of them. So I've heard. So I've heard. So she did her little bit in World War II as well. Yeah, I served in Rhodesia, in the Rhodesian army during the Terrorist War. We were conscripted, so I did my initial training in 1969, and I served right through to 1978 when I moved to South Africa. I still have my dog tags. I don't know if you can see them there.
No.
There we go. My dog tags and there was a bottle opener. It was a big thing. We were all young, 20-year-olds, 19, 20-year-old. Big deal to have a bottle opener on your tags in the hopes that you might come across a cold beer somewhere, you see, and be able to open it quickly. So that was my story, and I'll just show you my medal, my General Service Medal from the Rhodesian Army. But to answer your question about medics, yes, I was section commander in the bush. We would go out on patrol in units of 5 or 6, and each of us carried a little tube of morphine. It was like a miniature toothpaste tube with a needle attached. So all you had to do was unscrew the cap and then stick it in, and squirt the squeeze it, and it was 1 dose of morphine for someone in severe pain. We had to account for all of those. If you lost or used your morphine tube and you couldn't produce a wounded comrade to show where you'd use it, you were in serious trouble. I mean, because the danger of addiction, right?
Mm.
So things were very tight. What would happen? Distances weren't great in our war compared to World War II. So if we got hit, the section commander or anyone in the unit in that immediate unit would do first aid, whatever was necessary. Then we'd call in a casevac, and normally it would be a helicopter. And sometimes we'd have to clear a landing field. The helicopter would come in. Or if there was a truck nearby and there was no acute danger of landmines, they'd send a truck in to pick the injured person up. And they would go back to the nearest base camp, and be treated by a medic. And then if it was more serious, they would be helicoptered back to a hospital in the nearest city or town. And if it was serious, they would be sent back to the capital, Salisbury, for major surgery. Um, so lots of guys owed their lives to quick action by excuse me, their buddies or the medics. And we had on we would have a medic at every company or platoon base camp. There would be a medic, and the medics only carried a pistol. They didn't carry a rifle, and they carried a medical pack, and they went into the hot right under gunfire to help people out when necessary.
Mm.
Medic who sorted me out, and it wasn't a war injury. One of the 2 injuries I got in the war was on Christmas Eve, would have been 1969. We were stationed at Wankie, and the Wankie Colliery, a big coal mine, had very graciously invited all of our unit to go to their recreation club, their staff club, because Wankie is very hot. It's probably 40 degrees, and use their 40 degrees Celsius, that is, so around 100 degrees Fahrenheit, and have a swim in the swimming pool. And I was swimming in the pool, and I got out, and some kids had thrown a beach ball out and said, "Oh, can you pick up our ball?" And I ran across the grass near the beer garden, and somebody had thrown a beer bottle over, and there was a broken neck sticking up, and I trod on it and bled like a stuck pig. And our medic, with his wife, who'd come up to spend the weekend with him, was there, and he saw me. So he came, they wrapped a towel around, and he took me back to the barracks, and he sewed me up. Well, he didn't. He called the duty sergeant to sew me up, and it was full of Christmas cheer. He didn't do a very good job. It wouldn't give me any local anesthetic. He said, "You're a trooper. You should be able to take this."
Oh,
12 stitches.
oh,
12 stitches, no
kidding.
anesthetic.
Oh, no.
Yeah. Anyway, a week later, with my foot bandaged and covered in a plastic bag to keep the bandage clean, I went back to the bush with my unit because I didn't want to be left behind. And they kept me on light duties for about a week before I went on patrol. And unfortunately, because the sergeant didn't do a good job, stitches burst open. So his name was Tom Parker, our medic. He re-sewed it out in the bush, and that was with no anesthetic. That was way more painful than the first time. And tragically, about a year after that, tragically, Tom Parker went on a small airplane to pick up an injured soldier at a landing strip. And it was dark, a dirt landing strip, and they put military vehicles on the sides to show where the plane could land. They landed, they picked up the soldier, they took off. No one knows what happened, but the plane crashed into a rocky outcrop as it took off, and Tom was killed, and the injured soldier was killed, and the pilot was killed. So sad ending for poor old Tom. So that's my little story.
Oh my gosh, Peter, I'm sorry to hear that. Oh, yeah.
But
Thank you
we're
for
getting
sharing
back to
that.
Remembrance Day. No, you're welcome. We get back to Remembrance Day and on November the 11th, and it's a conspicuous day for me and all other Rhodesians because it's the anniversary of our Declaration of Independence, Rhodesia's very own UDI, just like America, on the 11th of November 1965. And for those of you watching, you will see a picture of the flag on the screen right at the moment. That is our Rhodesian flag. And that's it from me, Kathleen. Back to you.
Oh, thank you for sharing that information, Peter. That was, yeah, I'd never heard about that for Tom Parker. Sorry to hear. But to all our veterans, our thoughts are with you. And until next time, take care, everyone. Bye bye.
Bye, everyone.